Yo, what's going on today, fam? So today we're gonna be doing a quick little review, 30,000 mile review on my Hyundai Elantra in here, as well as talking about some of the plans for the build I have that I have named Project Giant Slayer. So this is my 2023 Hyundai Elantra in right here. I've owned it for almost 2 years. It just hit 30,000 miles today, so I figured it was a perfect time to do a bit of review about what I enjoy about the car, what I feel the shortcomings are, and what I would like to do to the car, right? But pretty much, pretty standard 2023 Hyundai Elantra N with the 8-speed wet DCT. Nothing too crazy there. Really, the only thing that is done to this car are wheels and tires. I have some nice Bridgestone 245 4018 Potenza races on there, 200 tread wear, sticky boys. But other than that, car is stock. You know, I haven't done anything to it, down to the stock brakes. I guess if you count changing out the badges, I guess I've done that, but I ain't really done too much to it. But I just want to give y'all a bit of an insight into my experience so far with the car. Especially for you guys and girls out there that are looking at this but are a little bit worried about the long-term reliability of it. I realize 30,000 miles ain't shit in the grand scheme of things, right? But I will say I've had 30,000 miles of relatively trouble-free motoring with this car, but I'll tell y'all a little bit more on the drive. Yep. All right, y'all. So we are in the whip. So I've had this car for almost 2 years, 30,000 miles. So I've been through quite a lot with this car. I've had this car on track. I've driven it in alpine roads. I've done a lot with this car. I've driven it in the winter time, so I think I have a pretty good idea of like what this car's strengths and drawbacks are. And really, I wanted to talk about some of the strengths first, things I really like about the car, right? So the transmission with the DCT. This DCT is so good. It reminds me of like an old school M DCT, and just the way it behaves, you know, even its automatic shift logic is really good, but it's super responsive. I think it's still engaging, and I also like the fact that it's kind of, you know, so you can do the sequential thing right here if you want to. You can shift with the shifter if that's what you like to do, which I think is fun. And so the second like real big performance highlight of this car is the suspension. And I mean that is, so it has three suspension settings, right? So you got soft, which is normal, then you got sport, then you got N, right? With N being the hardest. And even in its stiffest setting, a little bit lift off oversteer, but even in the stiffest setting, it's still bearable, still tolerable. The damping is well matched to the spring rate. And like, if you're buying this car for a performance driving car, leave the suspension alone. Don't put lower springs on it, don't do nothing. Because I actually added Swift springs, and it really made the ride unbearable on the street. You know, if you're only tracking your car, lower springs could be a good mod. But if you would like to maintain just the performance that this vehicle has, I don't recommend it personally. That's me, right? Another thing that really sticks out about this car is just the seat and the ergonomics of this car. Like, so the seat definitely gets low enough, right? It gets low enough to where you feel like you're sitting in the car, not on top of the car, which, you know, if you've driven some of its competitors, GR Corollas, Focus RS, things like that, those were cars you felt like you were sitting on top of. Definitely not that problem. And then another thing is perfect size steering wheel. Literally perfect size steering wheel. So your hands fall naturally. It has the right amount of thickness without being too thick. And it's just an all-around joy. This ELSD is magical. It literally claws you out of corners like the car is all-wheel drive, and you can really dance on the balance of grip with this. It's so good. It's so good. I mean, I could talk a lot about what makes this car so good, but it really sums it up in its dual personality. You know, just the fact that literally you can drive this car in eco, get 35 miles to the gallon comfortable, no issues at all. And at the flip of a switch, right, you know, when you're approaching a corner, then you can literally go in the N mode or your custom mode, and then it changes the whole personality of the car. I love that duality of the car. Like, I feel like if you just are able to have one car solution, this is it, hands down. Go ahead, buy this car, you won't be disappointed, right? Its size is appropriate. I will tell you this, if you haven't seen one of these in person, there it is. Once you actually see it, it's bigger than what you think. You know, like, you're expecting this car to be about the size of a Honda Civic, but lengthwise, it's about the size of a new Camry. Which that kind of caught me off guard. But once you live with the car for a little bit, you actually go to appreciate the size. Because one, the interior is huge. The seat goes back super far. So if you're over 6 foot, personally I'm 5'11", but if you're over 6 foot, the seat goes back far enough. I would say somebody up to 6'3" would be really comfortable with this, still be able to have their legs straight and still feel comfortable in this car even on longer drives. The back seat can fit adults. This back seat can fit 2 full-size adults, no issue at all. And a lot of, you know, the sport compact cars in this segment, they can't do that. They don't have that ability. So I really do love that. And the trunk on this thing, massive. If you do have a family, you know, and you have to make that decision of where the family car has to be the sports car, buy this ASAP. For $35,000 brand new, you can't beat it. It's so good. But let's talk about some things that I don't like, all right? So, in my 30,000 miles of ownership, I've experienced some rattles within the dash, some squeaks and rattles in the interior. I also have this undiagnosed clicking sound that I'm still experiencing. Wow, hold on. Just got to beat on it a little bit. Brake hard, turn in. Flat, I'm just flat. Oh my God, this thing is so fun. Right, so I have this undiagnosed clicking sound. It sounds like an axle, like a CV axle is kind of binding. It's kind of weird. When I take off from a stop, when I put the car in reverse, sometimes it happens. It's not all the time, but yeah, that is a problem. Another thing I don't love is the pedal feel, right? If you look at the competition of this car, and I understand this car is cheaper, so no knock to Hyundai, because the factory brakes are very adequate from the factory, and you can track this car at a decent pace with these stock brakes. But the brake feel just is not there with the pedal. It doesn't inspire confidence, and you really have to dig into the pedal sometimes, which I don't love. And that's actually one of the things I want to address by going to a fixed caliper setup in the front, just to kind of help with brake feel and give me more confidence in the brakes. Because recently, up on a trip to Austria with some friends, we were driving pretty spiritedly, and I had a scary moment when I faded these brakes, and they faded. It didn't feel progressively, it felt like they kind of faded out of nowhere, if I'm being honest with you. But, you know, just one of those things. But it could be addressed with just pads, but I do want to address it by going to a fixed caliper setup if possible. To highlight one of the things I love about this car is the exhaust, right? So the exhaust itself sounds so good. And when you're in normal mode, it's silent, right? When you're leaving the neighborhood, you don't want to wake the neighbors, it is absolutely silent. But when you put this thing in mode or sport mode, it really comes alive, and I really like that. Wow. This LSD is just doing work, y'all. I really hope the speed is coming across on camera, because when I tell you this thing hauls, it hauls. And it does it so easily. Like, I do know this road pretty well. I've driven this road well over 100 times, but you know, y'all can hear me talking. It's not like I'm all scatterbrained, or maybe it does sound like I'm scatterbrained, but dude. So when you apply throttle mid-corner, This thing pulls you to the apex. It's crazy. Like that, like ELSD. So good. And if you lift off like mid-corner, you know, like while it's loaded, the rear end wheel, man, like it'll come out on you, it'll swing out, and it'll help you aim towards the apex of that corner, which is so dope. I will say, one of the problems I am having with this car is because the oil cooler is routed through the cooling system, sometimes oil temps can creep up, right? Hottest I've seen was like 270, and that's when I backed off up on it. It's pretty good about keeping the coolant temperature in check, but I will say sometimes the oil temps do go up a bit more than I would like. Don't get me wrong, like modern oil can take up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. As long as you change it afterwards, you'll be fine. But still, I do wish there was a little bit better coolant from the factory. But overall, man, for how much money this car costs, it's hard to fault it. Like, and that all comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Shit, I forgot the elephant in the room. Octane learning. So for those of y'all that don't know, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you do know, every time you refill the Elantra in, it has to go through something called octane learning. And until the car is octane learned, it does not give you full boost, right? So it'll limit you like 15 pounds when peak is normally around 18 pounds. And when I say you feel the difference when a car is octane learned versus not octane learned, it's a big difference. Now, normally that wouldn't be an issue if the ECU could immediately figure out what gas you put in it, but a lot of times you can't octane learn this car because it needs very specific conditions to octane learn. So you might be down to a quarter of a tank or even half a tank before the car is giving you full power, which is annoying. But right now, the only way to truly fix that is with a tune. So that is one of my annoyances, one of my grievances, if you will, with the car. But overall, I absolutely love this car. I adore it. I think as far as daily driver goes, all right, watch this. I'm going in the eco and I'm going in automatic mode. Quiet as a church mouse, right? As I'm steering is light. And the suspension, while still firm, completely reasonable for daily driving. This car truly is something special. Now, since I live with it for about 30 miles, I know where its shortcomings lie. I know what things I do and I don't want to change. And once we get back to the house, I will tell you my future plans for this car. All right, y'all, so for those of y'all that stayed past the drive, got a little bit of surprise for you. I want to go over just what I'm going to be doing with Project Giant Slayer. I'm calling this the Elantra NGS. The plan for this build really is to create a car that does not compromise it in any way, is still able to grand tour at a high level like this does, because I live in Europe, so that means to get to some of these awesome driving roads that I drive with my friends a lot of times, I'm driving pretty far. Right, it might be 4, might be 5 hours, right? And then I'm doing lap after lap after lap. I'm beating on this car mercilessly, and it has to be able to take it and be reliable as well as fun, but most importantly, not punish me on the way to where I'm going. So I talked about some of the shortcomings in the driving portion. The brakes I didn't like, but yeah, the brakes, the fact that it has to do octane learning every time. So I have a few mods, just a sneak peek of some of this stuff. I basically spent about $5 grand. This isn't everything I bought, but this is some of the stuff, right? So first thing first, brakes. What I did was I got some gyro disc rotors, 2-piece, to help reduce some unsprung rate, but also help with the cooling. Right here, I'm going to a Renault Megane RS Brembo caliper. This is one of the few OEM Brembos where it's mounted like this, so it's easy to make an adapter to adapt them. And I'm going with a K-Systems Brembo brake adapter kit to be able to run this. I've got some Paget RS L29 pads. Those that know, these are the endurance pads of choice, and they do their thing pretty well. I mentioned the knocking noise and the diff. So a forum member said that installing these rigid collar subframe mounts helps with that, as well as these front control arm, kind of like stabilizer bushings, can help with that as well. So we shall see. On the power side of things, I bought a EK1 Lite to do a stage 2 tune. I got a high flow, high pressure fill pump right there. I got this from RPM Motorsports in the UK. So going to be installing these things as well, doing a stage 2 tune. Should make about 320, 330 wheel horsepower, 330 foot-pounds of torque. So this thing's going to scoot, especially with the 8-speed. I also got this strut bar. I'll be doing an install video for that too. All this stuff I'm doing install videos for. I got a floor mounted column pedal as well. I'm not going to go into the reasons why I thought that this might be a mod that was worthwhile, but once I go to install it in the video, I will definitely explain it. So this is my plans to help to improve this car, make it more drivable, make it oh shit, I forgot. Didn't even talk about what's in here. So I got PowerFlex caster and camber bushings, and these go in the front lower control arms. So I don't want to take up too much time in this video. I've already talked enough, but long story short, I feel like the rear end of the Elantra is perfect. I don't think it needs anything. I think it rotates well. I don't think it needs a bigger sway bar or anything. I do feel a lot of your bang for your buck is going to come with the front end and making the front end handle better, adding more camber, adding more caster, tightening things up a little bit, making sure that front end has a solid base to work from. So that's what my plan is with Project Giant Slayer, right? And the thing is, I want to beat up on Porsches. I want to beat up on M3s. I want to beat up on anything I may encounter on the road or the track within reason, and be able to do it in comfort. And when I'm done, drive home, throw it in eco, get 35 miles to the gallon, and act like nothing happened. So if you want to see this happen and you want to see what that Elantra becomes, I highly advise you, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, and come along for the ride. But that's going to be all for me. Take it easy. I'm out.
Coach.